I messed up tonight. I lost another fight. I still mess up, but I'll just start again. I keep falling down. I keep on hitting the ground. I always get enough. See what's next. Birds don't just fly. They fall down and get up. Nobody learns without getting it wrong. I won't give up, no, I won't give in till I reach the end, and then I'll start again. No, I won't leave. I wanna try everything. I wanna try, even though I could fail.
Hello and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Zootopia Minute, the minute-by-minute podcast where we review, analyze, and scrutinize everyone's favorite Disney film of 2016, Zootopia. And we are back after another bit of a break following BronyCon. We both had quite a bit going on for quite a bit in the summer, so we do apologize for the lack of episodes lately. We're hoping to get more on track in the future, but we have another exciting minute to share with you on this episode. So this is going to be minute 36 of Zootopia, and if you're following along, it's going to be from 3600 to 3659 on your timestamp there. And our minute begins just as Judy in the last minute had said, we are good at multiplying. She picks up and begins to look at Nick's tax returns. And the minute ends as Nick comments that wherever they're going is not a place for something, and we're cut off. So, really interesting string of events has just unfolded in this minute. We have had Judy completely turn the tables on Nick, revealing that, oh yes, criminal tax evasion. This is something that Nick is now going to get in trouble with, and she appears to sort of be almost blackmailing him into helping her find this missing otter. So, it's going to be a real exciting minute to talk about. All right, as always, I am your host, Simil, and I am joined here by my wonderful co-host,
Chaco, and a lot has happened since the last minute, but we'll talk all about that at the end of this minute, because this is one of my favorite minutes. This and the previous minute, the one we did at BronyCon, these are like my two favorite moments of Zootopia.
Good.
And especially this minute. This is the minute when, as I was watching in theaters for my first time, like, love it, love this movie. I am on board. Whatever happens, I am on board with this Zoo Train.
You were sort of on the fence up until this moment for the first, half hour of the movie, and then you get to this scene.
I was like, it's cute. Okay, there's like furries in the audience, but it's a little weird, but okay, it's cute. It's like, oh, it's a typical Disney movie. It's like, it's getting better and better. And it's like, okay, that's it. Especially when Nick makes that expression when she brings up his failing to file the tax forms, because that is the expression I have made when I forgot to do my tax forms or fill out my sales permit for when I vend at cons. So
see, that's something I wonder about, because it must be somewhat interesting for a vendor at cons to have to do their taxes, because you're vending in so many different states, and each state has their own specific regulations, and you travel a lot, and there's all these different expenses associated with that. Meanwhile, I just work like a fairly normal job in one place in my hometown.
Yeah, and your job handles all that tax stuff for you, right?
Yeah, you're self-employed, I guess, so...
Yeah, so I have to do that all myself. In fact, the panel I do at cons, I talk about it briefly, but my other friend, who goes by Snuggle Trumpet, he does t-shirts at Furry and Anime and PonyCons. He's actually a tax accountant, and he actually has a few of the vendors who hired him to actually help manage the taxes. Because it's a little bit, like you're right, it's a little tricky. Because some cons actually require it. Like, they won't let you vend unless you have your tax form. BronyCon, which you just came back from, is one. San Japan, the con that I just came back from in San Antonio, is another one. That I cannot even get my badge unless I have the form. While there's a PonyCon in Chicago I went to this year that they don't even care about the form. So like, oh, that's something between you and the government. We don't really care.
Right. I figure it's probably not something too many cons worry about unless maybe they get larger, because maybe there's some sort of liability thing involved. But if you're like a first year con starting out, I figure there's not a huge amount.
Like my first year vending at cons, I didn't even know how to do these sales. I was like, taxes? I never learned about filling out my own tax forms. We didn't learn this in military academy or med school. So, yep, that expression Nick makes, I think I've said it in previous episodes, but that is my expression. And at that moment is when I was like, yep, I am on board. I am just like Nick. We are both con artists. He and I, we are fellow con artists. And I was excited to see where this movie would be going.
Yeah, I do love that face that Nick makes.
Actually, I think the best Nick expressions are all in this minute.
Yeah, I do love the face he makes because it's sort of a pursed lips. Like, it's not just a straight up frown. It's, I don't know. It looks like that awkward
shocked and
seal
surprised.
meme. You know, the awkward seal image macro meme?
Yeah.
Where someone like photoshopped the mouth off of a seal. Yeah.
Well, actually, on Telegram, I have a sticker pack that's just cutouts of Nick's face from this movie for different expressions. And like,
Good.
half of the sticker pack is just from this minute. That kind of shocked face, that kind of worried looking face, and then
The
towards
grumpy
the end
one
of
at
that
the
minute,
end.
the just upset, grumpy looking face.
Yeah, Nick had a lot of great expressions in this minute. So I guess what we should do is sort of walk through it a bit more before we get rambling on too much. Basically, Judy has just dealt Nick a fatal blow here. He was all high and mighty in our last minute here. Judy was trying to arrest him. He says, for what? She says, felony tax evasion. And that's when his face immediately drops. So in this minute, we're looking a bit more in depth. We actually get to see his tax forms, which Judy apparently was planning this whole thing all along, and she has them with her on a little clipboard.
You know, it's actually interesting because I was thinking back to the previous minute thinking, wait, she's not in the computers. But she had Assistant Mayor Bellwether say, hey, you have a friend in City Hall, and that's where they keep the tax forms. So I was like, it's kind of connected.
That is interesting. I wonder if they would have that there. I mean, I suppose it makes sense. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I guess first let's look at sort of what was on that tax form. It's kind of hard to see, but it's a pretty basic tax form. You get to look at Nick's full name there. You get to see his phone number, which begins in 555.
Hey, that's Homer Simpson's phone number, and
Yeah,
Clark Kent's phone
555.
number, and Bugs Bunny's phone number.
It's a really, really popular prefix for phone numbers on TV and stuff, I've noticed. I don't know. How do I get one of those? That's the real question.
It's funny because people assume because all the law movies, TV, and comics use 555 that there's no number that starts with 555, but there actually are a lot of numbers that start with 555. So you can't pick any 555 randomly. There's like only a certain amount that's allotted for Hollywood movies.
That is interesting, yeah. Well, it's like that that song 8675309. Like, there was someone who actually had that number, and I think it was, if I remember right, it was the daughter of the mayor of Buffalo, New York. And so the mayor of Buffalo, New York was like really mad about this song because everyone kept calling his like young daughter, and it's like, what the heck?
Oh, well, that's interesting.
That could be totally wrong, by the way. That's just something I heard. But anyway, if we look at this tax form, it's basically a lot of columns and a bunch of zeros. And okay, if you're going to falsify your tax returns, why would you put everything down as zero? I mean, isn't that sort of asking to be audited? Because, okay, you're making no money. How are you surviving? Well, I don't get it.
You could be unemployed. Like, actually, the first few years out of college, my tax forms were just zero because that was around the time when, I was just out of college. I was mugged, so I couldn't really do any physical labor.
But if you're not employed, don't you just simply not have a tax form?
I guess there's that cutoff age when you're dependent and whatnot, because a lot of college students, after they graduate, they just go back and move in with their parents, and if they don't do work, and if their parents are providing them a roof to live under for free, then there's really no need for filing taxes. I guess it's just a courtesy because the government could or the IRS could also be suspicious if you aren't filing them. So I don't know.
It's a good question. We do see some other things about Nick, though. He is single. He did mark himself as single on his marital status. Yeah, there you go. Rejoice. He reported zero, yes, on everything, which is very bizarre.
Okay, I think I could kind of read it. It says the first line says number of exemptions claimed, which is zero. The second line is hard to read, but you could clearly see W2 at the end.
Right, and I mean, there was a number at the top of the form. I didn't know if that was a real number or not.
Oh, actually, the number at the top, now that I'm looking at closer, it looks like it's a social security number. But if you zoom in, it says your Zootopia official number. So I guess that's their equivalent of Social Security.
See, that's what makes it so confusing, because basically as this minute goes on, Judy says, yeah, you filed 0 and everything. You know what? Falsifying federal documents is a crime punishable by 5 years in prison. And she gets on this sort of faux somber face, which brings up, okay, it's a federal form. So we've now heard the word federal. And in some of these past minutes, we've been wondering about what exactly the governmental structure is in Zootopia, if Zootopia is part of a larger country or how all that works. Now we're getting the word federal thrown into the mix here, but you just mentioned that that number still has the name Zootopia in it, as if Zootopia is the entity that's issuing that number. So I'm still not sure.
Zootopia number, you're correct. But actually where Zootopia is written, it's in the box that says city, town, or post office. So it doesn't even give a room for country. It just says city, town, or post office. They wrote Zootopia.
So clearly there's some sort of federal government surrounding this whole land, basically. And we don't know what it is. It's not really referenced heavily. It's just there's something larger than Zootopia, I think we can assume. Like some level above Zootopia.
Yeah,
right?
The top of the document says Department of Treasury Internal Revenue Service. So I think more or less it's just copying it's obviously copying the United States tax.
Yeah, I mean,
form.
obviously.
So, but whatever this entity is, it has a Department of Treasury. And, it could be in a similar situation for when, before the colonies became the United States, they were still semi-autonomous, states.
Yeah.
And you had New York, the city of New York before it was even called New York City, just the city of New York within the state of New York. It could kind of be in that similar situation. You have the city of Zootopia within the federal entity, which is Zootopia.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't really help us much to learn quite more about how it's structured, but it's also not a super important aspect of the movie. Just another interesting little thing to wonder about, I guess. Well, as the minute moves on, Nick, after hearing all of this from Judy, says, well, it's your word against mine. At which point, Judy pulls out that lovely little iconic carrot pen, which doubles as a recorder, and reveals that she had recorded Nick proclaiming verbally the sort of money that he makes on a daily basis for many, many years. So this is bad for Nick. There's now proof in Judy's hands that, yes, Nick has indeed been lying on his taxes. So this is it. Judy has some leverage on Nick here.
Yeah, all thanks to that handy little cute carrot pen, which you could buy for $19.95 at the DW Disney store and Imagineering store, who are the sponsors of this episode. Just kidding. I wish
that is incredibly
overpriced.
Disney. That is incredibly overpriced. In fact, don't buy it.
No,
don't
actually,
buy the product.
I was just at the Disney store today, and they didn't have any of those, but the last time I was at a Disney store, they actually did have the carrot pen recorder in a really fake-looking plastic badge, and they were selling them for I think $17-18.
Yeah, it's absurd. I mean,
it's good for cosplay. If you're cosplaying as Judy Hopps, that's the best prop you get.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. It's an important thing to have. Well, then probably one of my favorite moments occurs after Judy has revealed that she's recorded all this. She says, it's called a hustle, sweetheart. And we see Nick have this sort of dead look on his face, and Toot Toot, Fennec, the fox, from inside that little pram there, the little stroller, says, she hustled you, and slowly dips the blind back off his head and just starts laughing hysterically at what has just happened to Nick, which is probably my favorite part of this specific minute. Just watching that thing come back, and first of all, his ears are huge. His ears just sort of unfurl as he's laughing.
They are.
She hustled you good,
kind of like the little gremlins popping out of an egg or something.
And then he says, you're a cop now, Nick. You're going to need one of these. And takes that junior police officer badge sticker that Judy had given him several minutes previously and sticks it on Nick's shirt and then walks away. And we get Nick with that amazing, just grumpy stone face expression, which is incredible.
He never looked more pitiable than that minute. In that minute, if his ears down, his head looks so fuzzy. I just wonder, if he was a dog,
that's the expression where it's like a toothbrush. He's being brushed with a toothbrush on the top of his head. You know what I mean? That meme. I don't even know where that originally came from. I think it was a
I think
bat.
it was the Batman. Not,
Yeah, it
not
was a
Batman.
bat
It was
originally.
petting a bat meme,
Yeah.
and then the bat was screeching, "I am the night," and then they added that to Batman, and then eventually everyone else.
Oh my gosh.
But what's interesting is, so we have Finnick kind of revealing himself to Judy, even though it's funny because Judy at this point knows, from her perspective, she knows that Finnick is not exactly who he claimed to be, even though she thought he was a baby fox for a while. But from Finnick's perspective, he doesn't know that Judy knows that. This is his first time he's revealing himself to Judy, which actually leads me to one of my notes I took down when watching this minute, that Judy and Finnick up to this point have not had a proper introduction of each other.
No, they've never really directly interacted while Finnick was not feigning being a baby. You're right. That is
Interesting. Well, hopefully we'll see more interactions between the two later.
Yes. Well, Finnick leaves, and it sort of leaves Nick in the hopeless situation of, well, now I kind of have no choice but to help her. And so Judy says, all right, start talking. And Nick says, because remember, we're all about the missing otter. That's what's going on here. That otter is still missing, and Judy is only going after Nick because she saw in that security camera footage that he had sold Mr. Otterton a popsicle. So she says, start talking. Nick says, I don't know where he is. I only know where he went. And then Judy says, all right, great. Come on, let's go. And then we have an interesting change of expression on Nick's face as he says, it's not really a place for something. Who knows? Another cutoff, which is very normal in this show. We always have lots of fun cutoffs.
Yeah.
What do you think it could be?
I don't know. Maybe it's not a place for cops.
Ooh. Oh man, a dangerous part of Zootopia.
Yeah.
Like sort of a downtrodden area where there's like not
A
good
bar with predators, lions, and tigers all around the pool
It's like a
table
biker
in
bar.
leather jackets.
Yeah, exactly.
Riding actual hogs.
Oh my gosh. Actual hogs. See, that's, I don't know, that's less Zootopia and more Flintstones, I think. You know how all the appliances are made out of animals?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It would be some Hanna-Barbera show.
That's bizarre. I don't know if I want to think about that. Riding actual hogs. No, maybe the bikers would be hogs.
You know, at some point in Zootopian society, there had to have been slavery, where there was an inequality between these predators and prey. You know, some prey were used for manual labor, just like in our society, where we use horses and cattle for farm work and stuff.
I don't know. We don't know if that necessarily happened. Maybe the big injustice of that world was simply the fact that predators and prey didn't always get along until that nice iconic handshake that was alluded to at the beginning of the film.
Yep. It's all in the realm of fan fiction, which we will not read unless you donate to our Patreon, which we have not started.
True.
Yeah, well, before we actually close off the minute, I do want to bring up the situation how Judy actually was able to wrangle up Nick to help her out on this case is actually reminiscent to how the U.S. law enforcement sometimes has to work, because sometimes you can't get a lot of these criminals or crime bosses on their crimes because they do it so on the radar with money laundering, gambling, illegal casinos and whatnot, that the only time you could get them is because they reported their taxes wrong. The most famous case is Al Capone.
Yep.
One of America's most infamous crime bosses. In fact, he might be the default template every other crime boss uses. They could not get him. The U.S. law enforcement could not get him on any charge except that he sent in the wrong tax form, and he was able to be jailed because of that. So I just think that's interesting that Judy went down this route.
It is. Well, it's good strategy for her. She's getting what she wants out of Nick at this point. So it's very interesting. We'll have to see where they go from there. But that's going to be it for that minute. We'll have to see what happens next time. But I'm sure many of our audience might be curious to know what we've been up to. We have had a bit of a gap. And a lot of that had to do with, you guessed it, cons, which is a big contributing factor to some of the delays we had. But Chaco and I both were at BronyCon, as you witnessed in our last episode, which was live at BronyCon with a few special guests.
Perhaps it was the biggest con of the year for the both of us, with Simo being one of the 3 mascots of the con, and myself being one of the larger vendors at the convention.
Your
as well
booth
as a
was
panelist.
huge. That was a big booth.
It's basically the largest booth you could get outside of an industry island. In fact, I don't think there was any industry island booths this year, because I think my booth was larger than Interplay. It was basically the same size as Interplay's, and we love fine.
Eventually, you need one of those big t-shirt tower booths they have at Comic-Cons that you can go inside of. It has like interior walls.
Yeah. I use that as an example of a great eye-catching displays for my convention vending panel, but you can only do that in a con that's held in a convention center. You can't do
not in
that
a hotel ballroom.
Yeah, and
really
also
work.
I can't like you know me. When I vend, everything has to fit in my airport luggage under 50 pounds. I cannot fit those towelers in my airport luggage under 50 pounds.
And you got to
One
get
of those things will
lighter,
weigh 50
lighter
pounds.
struts. Those things were actually heavier than I thought. Those
Yeah.
little like grid things you use to set up the display.
Oh yeah. So it was a fun con. I'm curious to hear from your perspective because you were very, very active. You're wearing that little body cam going around the convention center.
yeah.
You were in the role of the mascot, and you also I think you hosted some panels. You opened the con itself, and you did a lot of MC work.
Yes,
Is that
yes, I
correct?
did.
So how was that? I'm sure you got to interact with a bunch of VIPs face to face.
Yeah, a few times. There were a few VIP events that I moderated for, some panels. There were 2 different panels I did with Daniel Ingram and Gabe Brown, who are well-known musicians in the community. I mean, Daniel Ingram's the composer for MLP. So I had 2 panels with them. They're really cool guys. And I also moderated a panel with some of the voice actors where they were talking about dubbing for anime, which is a specific sort of field within voice acting that is almost sort of a separate world entirely because honestly, the process involved is very, very different.
Let me guess,
different
Brian
from-
was on that panel?
Yep, Brian Drummond was there, Kathy Wesseluk, Ian Corlett. It was a really good one. It was a lot of fun. Basically, if people were wondering in that last minute why I introduced myself differently and why I was dressed up, it is because I was acting in my capacity as Hoofbeats, who is one of the mascots for BronyCon, and I didn't want to spoil that illusion at any time. So it was a lot of fun for me, the whole con. BronyCon always is a lot of fun for me. Basically, my job is I just get to go around and interact with the attendees, make them feel welcome, make them feel like they're in an interesting space. And we do have a lot of events being hosted by us as well. There's me and there's 2 other mascots. One of my favorite things I get to do is I actually get to MC the concerts on Friday and Saturday night, Brony Palooza, where all the Brony musicians come and play some songs and
Well, it makes
do
sense
some
because your
DJ
mascot
sets.
represents the music side of the fandom.
The music side. Yes, that's correct. Hoofbeats.
I guess the role you fill in the BronyCon capacity is kind of similar to the role the Nick Wildsuiter cast member was
At Disneyland.
filling. At Disneyland,
You could
yeah.
say that. You could definitely say that. And that's actually something that I think a lot of cons are starting to catch wind of as something they can do. Everfree especially has sort of taken that idea. We've even sort of referred to it as like the Disney princess vibe, where if we have staffers who like their job on staff is to be in cosplay and interact with people and host a few events, it just helps make the whole thing feel more immersive. And so that's sort of the same thing BronyCon is going for with the mascot actors, I think.
Yeah, it's something we've been doing with BabsCon as well. I'm not sure if we did it before BronyCon. I think we.
You say we, but are you still involved with Babs?
I'm
in the
not
staffing
involved, but
capacity?
I still like because
It's your baby.
I was one of the, I guess, not really exactly founders, but I was like one of the first staffs there. But then I will say we for BronyCon as well, to be honest, because I've been so connected with most cons. But for BabsCon specifically, I think it was because it was run by the Further Confusion guys, which is a furry con. I specifically remember, I don't think it was the first year, but at least the second year, they did have an official Golden Gates fursuiter running around and acting in that role. So it was a natural fursuit. It's not a humanized.
Oh man, it's funny you say that though, because
Yeah.
when I tell people, like when I first told my parents or like just people I know from school or whatever that I work as a mascot at a convention, that's what they think I do. They think it's like a sports mascot, like I'm in a big giant suit or something. I'm like, no, I just wear clothes with some ears.
It is interesting because the ponies are not humanized aside from the Equestria girls version of them. They're ponies, and you would assume that the pony mascots would be fully ponified. I think Babs, out of all the cons, Babs was the only one that has had, and the Japanese Pony Convention, full suit mascots.
Nope, you're wrong. Everfree has. Everfree was one of the earliest ones to do that, I think. We have a front page fursuit.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, God,
and
yeah.
I'm trying to remember when that was made. The first year we had that would have been 2015, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, I think around the same time
Yeah.
BAM's done. But yeah, it's interesting that some cons do that. I'm trying to think about. It's funny that we do it within the PonyCon scene and anime cons, which some of them do have mascots. I don't think they actually have official cosplayers go around as the mascots. And come to think of it, the furry cons, they're basically built around mascots. People who it's a fandom built around people who dress up in these animal suits. You assume they would have a con mascot and an official mascot going around, but I can't think of any at the top of my head that actually.
Well, that
do have
raises an
official ones.
interesting question. In the furry fandom, when did fursuits first emerge? Because I'm sure there's some people that got into furry fandom through the suits. It's probably not a majority, but I think several of them must have. But at what point did that sort of emerge as a specific thing that furries did, is they would actually dress up? It went from just sort of appreciating the art and stuff and just, you know, hanging out with people that had the same interest to, now we're going to actually dress up as the characters.
Well,
I don't
Simo,
know.
I am glad you asked, because
boy.
if you do not know, I am a researcher
You're
in
a furry.
fandoms and conventions.
I mean, no.
I am not a furry, but I have been researching and interviewing a lot of different people and fandom personalities from the science fiction fandom, comic fandom, furry fandom, brony fandom for the past 5 years, because I am having a new book published on that topic. And let me look through my notes, because the furry fandom is one of the most documented fandom. They are really, really good at documenting their history.
They are. I've been on those wikis before, and it's like, geez, this is like really detailed.
So the term fursuit can be traced back to 1993, when it was coined by a furry known as Robert King. It refers to animal mascots costumes in general, as opposed to anthropomorphized object mascots or human mascots. They actually know who coined it and which year it was coined.
I'm so glad. You're right. See, when things are kept track of like that, and it's not just something you can only wonder about, you can actually find out. I love that.
But even though it was coined in 1993, fursuiting has been a permanent fixture in the furry convention, especially before the conventions actually got started. As some of you guys may know, the furry convention scene got started within the science fiction room parties in the late 80s. Specifically, 1984-85 is when one of the first furry cons got started. But fursuiting has actually been existing as something that's prevalent and what drew people to the fandom before then. It was just when it was coined as fursuit in 1993. So it's kind of interesting.
No kidding. I'm so glad that that's something that we can find out about, and we don't have to just wonder.
You could also find out that apparently there was a furry congressman or politician who just got like removed from office because I think one newspaper article published his furry fan fiction stuff.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's obviously discriminatory, and they should not do that.
Well, he was writing very, very not safe for work stuff, which...
So he's like the Ted Cruz of... You heard about that, right? That just happened yesterday.
That is new. The thing I'm talking about happened the day before as well, so I don't know. Is it the same?
No, okay. Here, guys, this is your clue as to when we're recording this. Ted Cruz's Twitter account liked a porn video. Like just a straight up porn video, and like someone noticed and it got out and like everyone was tweeting about it. And it was so funny because I was like, wait, really? And I went on his account, I looked at his likes and I saw it, and then I refreshed and it was gone. So I like saw it at the last possible moment to see with my own eyes that, this is a real thing that happened. I like watched the first few seconds of it and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's yeah. I don't know what sort of thing it is. You'd have to ask.
Okay, I found my politician who, not my politician specifically because he's not my party or state, but
not my congressman.
A city councilman from Connecticut, Democrat Scott Chamberlain, has resigned after... After the local paper reported his So Furry profile in which he, quote, tolerate rape and puts rape and love in the same category. And he's also penned erotic furry fan fiction which uses sexual situations involving furries and rape. And he defends rape. So... There you go. A Democrat just triggered a bunch of other Democrats.
The word rape was in there a lot, I think.
Yeah, I guess the person who wrote the article wants to hammer it home. Apparently, this person is one of those people who is tolerating of rape in fantasy, which I guess is fine, but I'm looking at the comments on the article, and they're like, yeah, even if it's not in real life, the fact that he thinks about this mentally as okay is probably means he's not mentally sound to be in public office. And then basically all the other comments are furries are sick, blah blah blah, F furries.
The thing is, like, being involved in like fandom for so long makes me think that that's probably not true. I have a feeling that has absolutely zero effect on his ability to function in a public office. I think it's cultural lag, right? This is a subcultural thing that exists, but the mainstream, it's so alien to the mainstream that they can't possibly comprehend how someone who's into that in any sort of capacity can like function normally in society. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's overblown, probably.
Yeah, I didn't read the article in depth, and I didn't look at his account. But yeah, I could really even though I don't think we're furries. I mean, I have attended some furry cons, and I know I have friends who are furries or into things which in that context might be cute and safe for them. I'm not even talking about the sexual stuff. I'm talking about just safe for work, cute stuff. Which out of context may seem so weird. Like, I have a lot of friends who like pool toys, which may sound really, really weird out of context. Like, there's so much things you could think of
like
about
noodles?
Pool toys. But in context for them, it's like really, really cute and adorable. And just because the outside world doesn't understand them, it throws it off the wrong way. Like, you get a CSI episode or a TLC episode or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we've gone on a fantastic bunny trail. This is possibly the best note to end the podcast on.
Oh, I should probably put hashtag not all furries. We know you're not like this Democrat senator.
Hashtag not all. Hey, there's our episode. There's our episode title. Hashtag not all furries. Perfect. At the last moment, we got it. Well, I think that is going to be it for this episode of Zootopia Minute, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please be sure to subscribe to us on our YouTube channel to get all of our episodes as soon as they come out. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at Zootopia Minute. And you can email us at zootopiaminute@gmail.com with pretty much anything. We don't care what you send. Send a photo of your lovely face. Send us your theories about the movies, anything you would like whatsoever. We don't care. Send it our way.
Actually, I do have one request to our listeners out there. We reviewed that Nick Wilde's name is Nicholas P. Wilde. If you know what the P stands for, tweet at us and we might give you a prize in a future episode.
It's Prower, like Tails. Miles Tails Prower. Anyway.
All right, I think
we're
done.
All right, guys. Thanks again so much for listening, guys. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.